Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I want to talk about the new evolutions and upgrades that have just gone live in North America. So, there has been several new evolutions for 6-star Godfest exclusives, which are exclusive to clearing Alt MD1 during a specific time period. But let's take a look at these new evolutions right here. So, Ryune's weapon gives you 3 team HPs and 2 water rows. So right from the get-go, we know this is a meaningful weapon assist just from a purely Awakenings point of view for mono water teams. Row, You'll Oak tends to be the supreme way to play him, and the rows help. The bulk is always useful. And then if we look at the active skill, it removes all orb blocks and then changes the board to water and dark. Water orbs locked, which doesn't coincidentally act as a pseudo spinner counter, and it also halves the damage for 5 turns. So halving damage for 5 turns is a big deal because virtually every single dungeon can find value from a large 5-turn damage reduction shield. In Shura 3, it buys you plenty of wiggle room for Hexazeon. You can even argue that you can use 50% shields to possibly stall on floor 1s if you have enough health to tank stuff, that sort of idea. So it's not a terrible waste there. Anything like Shura 2 can definitely utilize it as well for Gil's hit. I think MD2, if you're able to charge this up, you can abuse this against Blue Mill, against against Valkyrie Seal Descended. The Odins hit super hard, so having a big 5-turn shield lets you bypass the Odins with ease. Point of the matter is, a 5-turn shield on an 11-turn cooldown is pretty good, plus a board changer. I like this weapon assist for sure. For Sylvie's weapon, it gives you 2 skill bind resists. And I think this is a little tragic almost, because green tends to be reasonably well covered for skill bind resist if you have Alina on your team. And Alina is arguably the best cleric solution for mono green teams, and she comes with 2 already, so I would have preferred team HPs at least, but it is what it is. And their active skill is the exact same in terms of like a bicolor board changer with an orb or board unlock, locking the wood orbs for this particular one, and 5 turns of damage reduction. Still useful for sure, and like I said, if you need a long-lasting damage reduction shield, these are never a bad thing to do. Unfortunately, you have to remember that you will have to actually be able to beat Alt MD1 during the current bonus period. Next is Scheat's weapon, and Scheat's weapon gives you a skill boost and 2 TPAs, and that's pretty wild and crazy when you really think about it. That's a large amount of damage bonus for Daytona teams, and the active skill does change the outermost columns into water and hearts, which is obviously not synergistic for Daytona. That makes way too many water orbs, actually, because water becomes hearts of the active. And then it creates 4 non-water, non-heart orbs to fire, which at least is guaranteed to be light orbs after Daytona's active, so you will never be unable to activate unless locked orbs or something silly along those lines. And then, on top of that, it fully clears all Awoken skill binds. And all Daytona teams need is Awoken skill bind clearing. So, this is a meaningful weapon assist for sure, because you inherit this on a low base cooldown card. You can clear Awoken binds while having guaranteed activation for Daytona, because regardless of what the board looked like, you're able to at least generate some fire orbs, get a bunch of heart orbs. You should be able to survive at least in that point. I think that's quite an exciting weapon assist. And then lastly, for Ilm, you get a skill boost, skill bind resist, and a cross. Cross Awakenings, I still feel, are incredibly rare on weapon assists, so having one can obviously be meaningful because it helps you clear sticky blinds with relative ease, because sometimes it's nice being able to clear sticky blinds. And then for the active skill, you remove all orb blocks, you change the whole board to fire and light, fully recover your health, and then 4 times attack for devil. I'm not a big fan of this active skill. It's just a unlocking board changer, because when you really think about it, most teams nowadays, and most leaders in fact, give you an active skill that buffs attack, so it may not be necessary to have this attack buff. So I feel like this weapon just won't be as used as often unless you want these particular awakenings. The active skill, not as meaningful compared to the other ones, which I feel do a bit more overall. And then we have various upgrades to these existing cards. So for Ryune, their active skill has now been reflected to be the same as their new weapon assist, which is obviously nice. As a leader, it's just not going to be sufficient enough. Yes, you do have 3 times health, but it's just not going to be enough multipliers. Like, these are not good enough to exist. You could possibly argue that Ryune may have a chance to be a mono water sub if you need that long-lasting shield, because with a 10 combo and Rose, you're at least able to do respectable amounts of personal damage, but I think she's just definitely better off as a weapon assist. Same idea as Sylvie. Like, again, maybe if you need this long-lasting shield and you obviously can't clear the dungeon to get that, maybe they can be reasonable subs, but the problem is these cards don't come with many skill boosts. It's 2 skill boosts per, and transforming for Royal Oak or Nautilus is going to be hard with only 2 skill boosts. And if you want a shielding active for green at least, I think Susanoo is just a superior choice overall. For Scheat, their Awakenings have been changed to give you a better skill boost, but that's not really going to change much because there's no water TPA card to really take advantage of them. But if it does happen, you do have potentially a 10 combo to do so. Another train of thought you could potentially use is Daytona teams who need to actually play Shura 3 and the all attribute requirements. Scheat actually becomes a tremendously viable option. Their colors are useless when you think about it for Daytona teams because Daytona takes away fire and water orbs and converts them to lights and hearts respectively, so Scheat's never going to do damage. So you can give them 4 skill boosts and their active skill is that same Awoken Bind clear, so you know it's actually not a bad cleric option. Like, I think if you have your Daytona team and you need a cleric, because you don't need unmatchable on Daytona, your TPAs with the unmatchable latent are unmatchable effect. So Scheat actually can be a meaningful sub for Daytona teams. They just won't deal any damage unless you Skyfall something down because Daytona does take away those respective colors. For Ilm, they have been condensed for their Awakenings, so it's much more efficient Awakenings overall, and they've gained 2 new 7 combos, so they do more damage, but this active skill I don't find inspirational. Perhaps maybe you can argue that 6 skill boosts is a lot, which it definitely is, so maybe if you need 6 skill boosts to transform, maybe perhaps for the new Godfest exclusive you don't have other stuff because the new Godfest exclusive likes light VDPs, so maybe this could work. But again, this active skill I feel like just doesn't provide enough value to justify including most of the time. For Hestia, her leader skill was buffed, and that means virtually nothing because these are not leaders you really want to utilize. Like, they have flat HP, no damage reduction, and they have to match 2 particular colors for Hestia. You don't have a system-level active skill to do so. It's just not going to work. Sad buff. Same with Uranus. Sad idea. Like, we don't want his leader skill. We want the Awakenings. We want the active skill. We're not using them as leaders. Tethys, same problem. We don't care about a little bit more health multiplier. Maybe you could argue Tethys is sometimes a Daytona sub, which means if you do get leader swapped into Tethys, it may not be the absolute... Actually, it would be the end of the world because you're not water or wood. So ignore me. It's not going to change your life. Very sad. But still, Tethys is a good Daytona sub if you need color coverage for Shura 3 because all those skill boosts super resist and TPAs. For Chronos, same problem. This leader skill doesn't help. Same with Astria leader skill. It's just not helping. Like, these are just not something you need to do, unfortunately. For Priscilla and this rest of their pantheon, they've all received similar buffs. So for their base forms, all of them have been pushed up to having 4 skill boosts in their regular Awakenings, and their Super Awakenings can give another 2, so they can be 6 skill boosts for Priscilla, Talda, and Klaus in their base forms. More is more. I like that. Furthermore, their active skills have been improved as well. They're still the same 3-turn cooldown, but they will still give no Skyfalls for now 1 turn instead of 3 turns, so not permanent sad Skyfalls. And then in addition to that, you still get the board unlock, and you make 6 non-hard orbs into their respective primary color instead of 5. So again, more is more for orb generation, but less Skyfall debuffing on yourself. Good times all around. It just gives them a little bit more flexibility. I don't think they're going to ever be like the best choice to use as a sub for their respective monocolor teams, but with 6 skill boosts and a low base cooldown, it's never going to be a bad thing, along with strong personal damage without VDP. Never bad for sure. For Priscilla, in her new the updated active skill, it has a multi-step effect. So this is like a new mechanic. So basically the idea is whenever you use the active skill of the card itself, not the inherit, but the base skill itself, you will advance or the skill will evolve into the second form. So in their base form, they still get that big amount of damage reduction, attack buff, and yeah, damage reduction and attack buff. So useful if you need to shield yourself. But then when it does step 1 further up, you get the same big damage reduction. You also get RCV and attack buff for 2 turns. So it's definitely an upgrade. I don't feel like it, it still is definitely stronger, but the problem is oftentimes you want to utilize these active skills, but you may want to have inherits to solve floor 1 for you, because this active skill without any like upgrade is only 1 turn of damage reduction. It's not going to be that much. It's not going to help you stall. Oftentimes you inherit like a delay or haste or something on top. So to advance these skills, you actually have to use them over and over again, which I feel like can be a little bit problematic sometimes. But at the same time, it's not a nerf by any means, because their base skill is the exact same as it was beforehand, and now it just gets better if you use it multiple times. And then for their leader's skill, they have ever so slight change. What the fish? Did it even change? Halves damage, add 2 combos. I don't see any change here. So maybe I'm reading it wrong, but the words look identical. Unless it says 13 instead of 11. Maybe my eyesight's bad. Maybe it does say 13 times. So yay, a little bit more damage output. But again, these are not necessarily leaders we would necessarily want to pursue for endgame or more challenging content. Same idea with Klaus. Similar idea. Awakenings got 1 more skill boost. Active skill has been improved. It's the same color copy for all of them. Their leader skill now gives a tiny bit more attack multiplier and like ever so slightly more health multiplier. I don't think it's necessarily the best kind of leader, unfortunately. Klaus in their evolved form, their leader or their active skill now advances. The same active skill in the beginning. It's still only a single turn of delay. Unlock the board, create 5 water, dark, and hearts, and then it evolves. When it evolves, you get the same delay and then vastly reduced damage for 1 turn. So big shield. So that's actually not a bad thing. You always need to have a big shield in virtually every single dungeon. So having that in tow with an active skill that you used already is not a bad thing. The drawback is I feel like it's just difficult to work Klaus into a given team at this point in time, just because there are better things out there, unfortunately. Like, I made my Klaus 120. I didn't really use it, and I kind of regretted actually doing so because I just never use him. But point of the matter is the skill now evolves to give damage reduction, which does help for sure. For Taula, same idea with the Awakenings, just 1 more skill boost. Her active skill now does 1 turn of no Skyfalls and 6 instead of 5 Light Orbs. Tiny multiplier differences that are probably not going to make a difference. For their active skill, I find Taula is actually quite strong, and she's a good option if you don't have Alina for your mono green teams. And if you do Nautilus paired of Christmas Manoa, you don't need the RCV from the enhanced hard orbs as badly. So Taula actually works quite well in that Christmas Manoa plus Nautilus setup. And then for her active skill, it's an attack buff, which we don't need for that team, but you get a full Awoken Bind skill and Unmatchable, which is great. We love cleric style active skills. And then the skill advances. And then when it does advance, you get to have orb movement time and an attack skill buff, or active, and then the same full cleric active skill with the movement time and attack buff. So it's definitely much stronger. Like, if you didn't have a movement time buff on your team somewhere, not a bad thing to have overall. Obviously, the biggest drawback is being able to utilize this active skill over and over again to get to the form you want. But I think Taula is definitely a strong wood cleric, especially if you don't own Alina and you want a pair of Christmas Manoa, or you have your own Christmas Manoa with Nautilus. You work out quite well. You also have 4 skill boosts. It doesn't show the super wakings, but you get 4 skill boosts as well. So respectable amounts of damage, especially big damage with VDP. 4 skill boosts, full cleric, not a bad card overall. And those are all the various buffs and new evolutions for cards. And I just want to touch upon the fact that alt dimensions of the Mystics, or MD1, or whatever you want to call it, has been rotated to have new gems being featured, and it's boosting machine and physical type cards. So if you populate your team with physical and machine type cards, you're going to have a much easier time because you have a much bigger health and recovery pool to play around with, and you get the gems for those respective cards. So if any of those evolutions for Ryune, Sylvie, Scheat, or Ilm was appealing, you definitely want to start playing that dungeon. And then finally, with this maintenance, we have Sanctuary of the Gods having a new floor added for Reincarnated Athena Non-Descended. It is a challenging dungeon. I've managed to clear it already with Daytona with Athena Non as a sub, so you can look forward to watching that on YouTube as well if you're looking for a bit of inspiration. And then if you do run Athena Non as a sub on the team, which is why Daytona tends to make the most sense for that, you're guaranteeing yourself the gem to drop. So there are buffs to the Draconic Orchestra, but I won't cover them in this video because I like having things separate because it's just easier to find information. So with that being said, let me know what you think about these new evolutions and buffs in the comments below. Do you think it's a meaningful thing to have at this point in time? And if some of them are meaningful, which one of these cards got you the most excited? Regardless of all that, hopefully you all have a truly fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.